The rain hadn't stopped for hours when a young woman knelt beside a shivering old man on the sidewalk and quietly asked if he had somewhere warm to sleep that night. He looked up at her with tired, guarded eyes, expecting the same indifference he had grown used to from strangers. What she didn't know was that the ragged man she was about to take into her small apartment was, in secret, the wealthiest man in the entire world. Before we begin, if you believe kindness given without expecting anything in return always finds its way back to you, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who believes in compassion, and subscribe to Daily Kindness for more heart-touching stories. And don't forget to tell us in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to know where our amazing community is joining us from. Mia Alvarez worked long shifts as a home health aide, caring for elderly patients across the city, often walking home late at night because the bus fare cut too deeply into what little she managed to save each month. She lived alone in a modest one-bedroom apartment above a laundromat, having lost her parents years earlier and built her small, careful life entirely on her own. Mia wasn't wealthy by any measure, but she had never once passed someone in need without stopping to offer whatever she could. A sandwich, a few dollars, a kind word when nothing else was available. That particular night, walking home through a storm that had soaked through her jacket completely, she noticed an elderly man huddled beneath the awning of a closed pharmacy, his clothes worn thin and dripping, his hands trembling from the cold. Most people hurried past without a second glance, the way people often do when the world has taught them not to look too closely at suffering. Mia stopped. She knelt beside him and asked gently if he had eaten, if he had anywhere warm to go for the night. The man, quiet and clearly exhausted, admitted he did not. Without a second thought, despite knowing how little space and money she had to spare, Mia offered to let him stay at her apartment until the storm passed, promising him a hot meal and a dry place to sleep. The man hesitated, studying her carefully, unaccustomed to genuine kindness offered without any hint of suspicion or expectation. Eventually, he accepted, introducing himself simply as Walter. What Mia didn't know, what Walter had deliberately hidden for years, was that his real name was Walter Kingsley, the reclusive founder of one of the largest technology and investment empires on the planet, a man whose net worth was measured in the tens of billions, and whose face had once appeared on the cover of nearly every major business publication in the world. 2 years earlier, following the death of his wife, and a painful falling out with his only son over the direction of his company, Walter had grown disillusioned with the life he had built. Surrounded by people who valued him only for his wealth and influence, he made an impulsive, almost desperate decision to disappear from his old life entirely for a period of time, living quietly on the streets under an assumed identity, determined to find out, once and for all, whether anyone would still treat him with basic human decency once his fortune was stripped away. He had spent nearly 8 months living this way, sleeping in shelters when he could, on sidewalks when he couldn't, watching countless people walk past him without so much as a glance. Mia was the first person in all that time who had stopped. Over the following days, Mia shared what little she had without hesitation. Simple meals, her own blankets, quiet conversation in the evenings after her long shifts. She asked Walter little about his past, sensing he carried some private grief he wasn't ready to discuss, and simply let him stay as long as he needed, treating him with the same patient dignity she offered to every one of her elderly patients. Walter, in turn, found himself quietly healing in ways he hadn't expected, helping Mia repair a leaking cabinet in her kitchen, listening patiently as she talked about her dream of one day opening a small in-home care service of her own, something she had never had the resources or connections to pursue. Weeks passed. Walter grew stronger, more like himself, though he never once revealed the truth of who he really was. Eventually, his assistant of over 20 years, worried after months without contact, hired a private investigator who finally located him, not in a boardroom or an overseas retreat, but in a small apartment above a laundromat, sharing dinner with a woman who had no idea she had spent the past several weeks caring for one of the richest men alive. When the truth finally came out, Mia was stunned into silence, replaying every small moment of the past weeks in an entirely new light. She insisted, almost immediately, that she wanted nothing from him, that she had helped him because it was simply the right thing to do, not because she expected anything in return. Walter, moved deeply by her sincerity, told her that was precisely why he intended to help her anyway. He quietly funded the entire launch of the in-home care service Mia had once only dreamed about, providing not just the capital, but his own guidance in structuring it properly, insisting on covering every operational cost for its first 3 years, so it could grow without the constant fear of collapsing under financial pressure. He asked for no ownership stake, no public credit, only that the company be built around the same principle that had once saved him, treating every person, regardless of circumstance, with dignity. Mia named the company Kingsley Home Care, though at Walter's quiet insistence, she never publicly explained where the name had come from. A year later, the company employed over 30 caregivers across the city, offering services to elderly patients regardless of their ability to pay, funded in part through a foundation Walter established anonymously in her honor. Walter, meanwhile, slowly reconciled with his estranged son, inspired in part by the simple example Mia had shown him, that connection built on genuine care mattered infinitely more than legacy built on wealth alone. He still visits Mia's small apartment above the laundromat from time to time, not as a billionaire arriving in a motorcade, but simply as Walter, sharing dinner with a woman who once knelt beside a stranger in the rain and asked if he had somewhere warm to go. Sometimes the smallest act of kindness, offered without any expectation of return, ends up changing more lives than anyone could ever imagine. And sometimes, the richest man in the world is simply looking for someone willing to see him as a person first.